Well, in the 1980 Lake Placid Winter Olympics, the United States pulled off the Olympic upset of the century. In the Miracle on Ice, a ragtag bunch of American college and amateur hockey players, average age 21, defeated the Soviet team and went on to win the gold medal against Finland. A little trick question there. Soviets were a hockey juggernaut, though. They had won every Olympic gold since 1960. They crushed their opposition, and the 4 Olympics prior to 1980, they had a record of 27-1-1, outscoring the opposition 175-44. 3 days before the start of the 1980 Olympics, they had dismembered the U.S. team by the score of 10-3. So how did the U.S. do it? The Soviets were veterans of the game. Some had been playing together for more than a decade. The Americans were kids that had been playing together for less than a year. Not only did they defeat the Soviets, but they defeated every other medal contender in the games, including the Czechs and the Finns. How did this group of kids pull off what Sports Illustrated actually called the sports event of the century? How did they do it? You beat my point. Sermon's over. Teamwork. Be a team, people. They did it through teamwork. Probably a lot of things contributed, Russian overconfidence, American stamina, conditioning, home ice advantage, played in Lake Placid. But more than anything else, the U.S. won because they played as a team. There were no NHL players on their team. There were no standout players. They did not have the talent to win. They won because they learned to play together better than the others. The 2004 movie Miracle draws on this theme of teamwork. Coach Herb Brooks, when Herb Brooks, played by Kurt Russell, assembled his team, he had to deal with college rivalries and young egos trying to prove that they belonged there. Over the course of the movie, players repeatedly introduced themselves with the name of the college they play for. And a lot of these college players didn't like each other. And the scene I just showed you takes place after a particularly ugly exhibition game against Norway. In the scene, Brooks has the team do ice sprints far into the night. And in a showdown with players and coaches, he grinds them down into ice dust until they get the point. When they put on the jersey for the U.S., they don't play as players from the University of Minnesota. They don't play as players from the University of Maryland. They don't play as players from Boston University. They play for the United States of America. And they represent all the values and the ideals of the greatest country in the history of the world. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. I want to talk about teamwork this morning. As Robert said, we're in week 3 of our series here at Rooftop called Olympic Faith. Basically, this series is an excuse for us to watch the Olympics and talk about how faith in the Bible is talked about in very athletic terms. There's a lot of athletic imagery in Scripture. Jeremy talked 2 weeks ago about how training has some value, earthly training has some value, but training for godliness has eternal worth. Last week we talked about courage. As when Scripture tells us to fight the good fight of the faith. The Bible is always comparing following Christ to a race involving training and courage and perseverance and reward and also teamwork. Following Christ, doing church, is a team sport. Just as there are many sports of the Olympics that are team sports, so following Christ as part of a church is a team event. There's 2 types of sports at the Olympics. You know what they are? Summer and winter, and team and individual sports. Team sports are fundamentally different than individual sports. The goals are usually the same. You got to score more points, you got to get a better time, more goals in your competition. That's the same. But team sports have fundamentally different requirements. They require an entirely different set of skills: cooperation, communication, conflict resolution, humility, coordination. For this reason, there's actually something more appealing to me about team sports than individual sports. I like individual sports too. I'm a golf guy because I love just relying on myself and myself alone. But I also know there's something extra required in team competition. Take rowing. Now, does anybody watch the rowing competition? These people are huge. Not only do they have to be big and strong and athletic, but they actually have to do everything they're doing, like every muscle fiber twitch, at the exact same time that the other 3 people are doing it. Or take synchronized swimming or, incredibly, synchronized diving. Anybody watch the synchronized diving competition? This is unbelievable. Not only do these swimmers or divers have to be acrobatic and graceful and controlled, they have to be able to communicate and listen to each other while underwater. And I was thinking of this last week during women's gymnastics. I'm sure you know by now that the U.S. gymnast Jordan Weber, the reigning world champion, was supposed to compete for the all-around gold and individual gold. She'd been dreaming for years of becoming the next Mary Lou Retton and the next Nastia Liukin, is that her name? Next, Sean, who? Johnson. Carrie Strug. But Weber was fourth in the qualifying round behind Americans Allie and Gabby. They go by first names, the Hernan household. But each country can only send 2 gymnasts, so Jordan missed out on the dream, even though she was ahead of like 21 of the other finalists that got sent to the competition. So she watched while her teammates competed without her, while the flying squirrel flew onto the medal stand. The next day, though, she came out for the team gold medal, and she showed her teammates just how good of a teammate she could be. She was up first on the vault. She nailed the vault, showing her teammates she was as committed to team gold as she was individual gold. It inspired her team to victory. And after the U.S. won the gold, I actually found myself wondering, which one I'd rather have? Not that anybody will ever offer me one or the other, but which one I'd rather have, a team gold medal or an individual gold medal? You know, sure, an individual gold medal says more about somebody's skills, speed, strength, and strategy. Plus, they get all the money, and they get the cereal box to themselves. But team golds have to share the podium, so there's that. But a team gold says a lot about somebody's ability to work with each other for a common goal. In fact, let me go ahead and take a little survey here. I know as you're watching the Olympics, you're dreaming of actually participating, like Mr. Bean in the Olympics. This is my favorite part of the Olympics so far, by the way, is Mr. Bean running in Chariots of Fire. I don't know if you saw that, but it was worth the money. So I know you dream of competing in the Olympics. You dream of crossing the finish line, making the drive, scoring the goal. But which would you rather dream of? What would you rather have, an individual gold medal or a team gold? All those who would prefer an individual gold medal, I know you've had this dream. All those who dream of winning an individual gold medal, raise your hand. Just out of curiosity, what event do you picture yourself running in? Running, yeah, Katie. Swimming. Any other swimming dreamers out there? Who else dreams of an individual gold medal? Okay. Yes, Kathy. Which event? The heptathlon. Do you remember who won? Yeah, she has a name though. Jessica Ennis, something like that. All right, raise your hand if you dream of winning a team gold medal. Yeah, Mark, what sport do you dream of? Any team? Women's water polo? They won gold, you know? Yeah. Anybody else dream of winning a team gold medal? Yeah. What team gold medal do you dream of? Soccer. Well, there you go. They won the gold, right? Handily. 2-1 over Japan. So for those of you who would rather win a team gold medal and find yourself dreaming of winning a team gold medal, you're in luck to be here this morning because Christianity is a team sport. The church is a team event. Church is not an individual event. We see this all over the scriptures. We see this in how Jesus calls 12 disciples, seems to select them for different reasons, giving them different roles to play. He even seems to assign team captains. He seems to run certain types of disciple plays. We see it in how God in the Old Testament formed 12 tribes out of Israel to work together for the common goal of eradicating paganism in the Middle East. We see it in God himself. God himself is the team. Our Trinitarian God has 3 team players. They're all passing the ball back and forth to each other. No one's holding anyone else up on the shoulders. They're all not getting the glory for themselves. They're just getting the goal. We see it in Paul's description of the church as a body with many members working together. In fact, let me share a verse with you from the book of Philippians. In Philippians, Paul writes this. It says, "Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then I will know that you stand firm in one spirit, contending as one man for the faith of the gospel, without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you." Stand firm in one spirit, contending as one man for the faith of the gospel. You can't tell this in the English translation, but Paul is using, again, a sports metaphor here. New Testament was written in Greek, and the Greek word for contending together is a sports word used of athletes who are trying really hard. The Greek word is sun athluntes. Sun athluntes. Sun is a prefix, it means with. Athluntes is a word meaning to strive or contend. It's where we get the word athlete. Paul's telling the Philippians, athlete together. Contend together as one man for the sake of Jesus. Not as lots of people, but working together as one man. This was very important in Philippi because they had opponents in that city who were very strong. They were battling the Russians in Philippi. There were people in that city who were working against them to destroy their church and their work. They had reason to be frightened. But Paul says that as they contend together as one man, they don't need to be frightened. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And as they learn to work together and support each other, they can take on anything. It's kind of like Voltron. You remember Voltron? Please tell me you remember Voltron. Voltron's an old 1980s cartoon, after-school cartoon about robotic lions on the planet Eris. As I say it, it sounds like the most ridiculous thing I've ever spent my time doing. Robotic lions on the planet Eris. They could fight individually until they came up against an opponent too great for them, which seemed to happen at the end of every episode. Then they would join together into a giant robot, and their abilities combined could accomplish more. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's how the U.S. hockey team won in 1980. They didn't have enough talent to compete as individuals. They had to learn to function as a team. Now, obviously, this is something we got to learn. Our opponent is even bigger and greater than the Soviet hockey team. Our opponent, who's that? That'd be the devil, who opposes our church and the work of God. The devil is far more evil than the Red Menace. But contending together as one man for the gospel is not something Christians are super good at. This is not working together. Contending together is not something we're very good at. I haven't been around for super long, but I rarely see churches that know how to work together as one man for the gospel. Most churches that I'm aware of operate as something far less than a team. Most churches have a bunch of people doing their own thing. They have a small group of people doing most of the work. 20% of people do 80% of the work. You know that? Ever heard that? It's a cliche because it's true. They have their own all-stars that dribble the ball up and down the court by themselves. Most churches have boards and staff and pastors that have different visions, if they even have vision at all. They have different philosophies about what's important, what's permissible. Most churches have more spectators than team members. A lot of churches are actually packed with spectators, not team members. When I think of most churches, I don't think of Voltron or the U.S. hockey team or a well-run, highly functioning team. You know what I think of? I think of Muppet Man. You know of Muppet Man. We watch a lot of movies at our house. And the latest Muppet movie, Muppet Man, was a man made up of various Muppets trying to stand together as one man in order to get into Miss Piggy's office. That was the goal. That was the score. Didn't work. They couldn't coordinate their efforts. Remember the scene? Muppet Man moving all over. Didn't work. Fozzie couldn't coordinate the efforts. It fell apart. Again, it reminds me of most churches. And even here at Rooftop, it's hard to function as a team, contending as one man for the gospel. Instead of the U.S. Olympic team, we look like Muppet Man, moving awkwardly like a bunch of puppets trying to move forward. Satan is not threatened by Muppet Man. He's not fooled by our efforts. He's certainly not scared. But learning to athlete together as one man for the gospel is our only way forward. I mean, to borrow a line from Kirk Douglas, no offense, we don't have enough talent here to beat the devil. We don't have any all-stars, any Wayne Gretzkys to become the church that we all dream of becoming. It's not going to happen on talent alone. It can happen, Jeff, you want to ruin my point again? Based on, what is it? Come on. Teamwork. It can happen if we learn to fight together, to strive together, to live together, to serve together as a team. Of course, that's easy to say and preach. How do we contend together as one man, one team for the gospel, though? That's a good question. It's very important we have an answer. The good news is, do you suppose I brought one with me this morning? Yes. The good news is I've actually played a few team sports in my day. Played with the St. John Bosco soccer team and the Creve Coeur Eagles baseball team in junior high. I don't know if you've heard about them. I've coached a few team sports too, and during my long, illustrious career with Little League team sports, I've worked very hard to get my players working together as a team. We've had to work together as a team. We've never had a lot of stars in our team. We had like one star on Max's baseball team last year. He could pitch like 60 miles an hour as a third grader, and it would go straight and right in the strike zone. When he realized what team he had actually signed up to play for, he quickly left the team, so that did not last long. So we've never really had a lot of stars in our team. We've had to learn to play together. We've actually won some games based on having the ability to play together as a team. And this morning I want to share with you some of the things I find myself telling the players I've coached in order to get them contending together as one man. They are all very biblical ideas and very important given the fact that the stakes of what we're playing for are a little bit more important than the stakes I played for on the St. John Bosco soccer team. A little bit more serious. But here's what I tell my players. For example, I tell my players this: play your position. Good teams have lots of players that know how to play their position. I cannot tell you how many times I've coached baseball and basketball teams in which everybody's going for the ball, running around with no sense of where their position is. Then we get the ball, and we have nobody to pass it to because nobody's in their position, or the other team gets the ball, and because we're all over here in one corner, they just dribbled the ball down the court and make the basket. Last year, during one of our baseball games, we were in the field, and the batter hit the ball past the left fielder, and I looked up to see my shortstop run past the left fielder to get the ball at the fence. And since he wasn't playing cutoff, the left fielder and the shortstop both had the ball, so the shortstop ran the ball back in, and instead of throwing it to the third baseman to cut it off, the third baseman was picking his nose, so the shortstop just ran all the way into home plate to try to tag the guy at home. By contrast, good teams have the entire field covered, everyone playing their position, they know their job, how it fits into the overall effort, they won't leave their position. It's how the U.S. women won their gold in the soccer game, how the women's water polo team won their gold, how the women's sand volleyball team won their gold. It makes you wonder if women have an ability to get together better than men. Nah. Weren't there a lot more women team golds this year? Let's wonder about that. Defenders defended, spikers spiked, scorers scored, stoppers stopped, strikers struck, goalkeepers kept. Great churches are filled with team players who know their position, they play it, knowing how it fits into the overall effort. The Bible makes this point emphatically. Everybody has something different to do. It has got to be done, otherwise there's a hole in the effort, the other team will find it. Paul writes in Romans, for example, just as each one of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we who are many form one body, each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man's gift is prophesying, let him use it in proportion to his faith. If it is serving, let him serve. If it is teaching, let him teach. If it is encouraging, let him encourage. If it is contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it is leadership, let him govern diligently. If it is showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. Church is a team effort. Everyone's got a role. We all have to do it. I mean, hopefully you know this, but even putting on this Sunday morning service is an incredible team effort, involving hours of preparation in advance and over 50 volunteers for an hour and 15-ish minute experience. The musicians have practiced and rehearsed, the greeters are ready with the programs, the cleaning crew is clean, the hospitality team is the coffee brewed, the kids' workers are here, the room's ready to go, the treasury team is ready to secure the offering, the prayer team has prayed for the service, the lawn team has mowed the weeds, the facility team has fixed the air conditioner. Aren't we so glad to have a working air conditioner this morning? Praise God. The administrator's ready to type in info card data. Everybody knows their position and it fits in, and how it fits into the goal. And what's the goal? Jeff? Show people Jesus. That's the goal. Show people Jesus here this morning. We're all doing many things to show people Jesus Christ. And if we're not all playing our position, Jesus gets less visible to people when they show up here. When visitors show up and greeters aren't friendly, Jesus looks less friendly. Do we want to show people mean Jesus? When visitors show up and the kids' rooms aren't staffed, Jesus looks like he could care less about kids. What a statement. When people show up and the coffee isn't ready, Jesus seems inhospitable. When people show up and the sound isn't working, Jesus looks like he doesn't have much to say. In the church, everybody has a position to play on the team. It's important to the overall effort. What's your position? What's your role? Do you even know? Do you even have one? If not, let's find it. We've got a third floor meeting coming up soon. That's where you go to find out what gifts God has given you and where they fit here. Show up. Let us know you want to show up. We'll get you there. Because there's a spot on this team that is empty without you. We cannot win the game unless you're playing your part. Player position. Secondly, I find myself saying this to the teams, talk it up. Anybody grow up on teams here and that? Talk it up. Let me hear some chatter. Anybody hear that in the baseball? Let me hear some chatter. You know, Brian Regan, he's a comedian. He's got this funny bit about Little League. Said he never really knew how to respond when his coach told him, let me hear some chatter. He thought, it's like, talk like chipmunks. Let me hear some chatter. That's not what it means. It means encourage each other, challenge each other to do their parts. This is how people achieve their potential, by being challenged by their teammates. Last week, for example, we were watching Michael Phelps. Anybody watch Michael Phelps? Swim for his final medal in the men's 4x100 medley. The Americans won easily. Phelps scored his 22nd medal of the Olympics. But in the interview afterwards, one of the other swimmers, I cannot remember his name. It was Phelps and 3 other guys. And in the interview afterwards, one of the other swimmers said that before the event, before the day, the entire U.S. swimming team had gotten together for like their final meeting of the event, and just to get focused and fire each other up. And he said that during the meeting, one of the other 4 guys, stood up and he said, guys, hopefully you all recognize this, but we are swimming with the greatest Olympian of all time. What an honor. Let's give him our best, help him finish his trophy set. They won handily. Good teams talk and chatter and inspire each other, challenge each other, hold each other accountable. This is the benefit of team sports. When you're playing an individual event, you got to talk to yourself. In a team event, you got to challenge each other. The church should be like this. The author of Hebrews says, let us consider how we may spur one another on to love and good deeds. Paul writes to the Thessalonians, encourage one another, build one another up, just as you are now doing. Let me hear some chatter. That's the Greek. Good teams do this. It's not always positive words either. I remember back in 2010, during the Cardinals season, the Cards were in the playoff hunt. Chris Carpenter was on the mound. He's quite a competitor, you know that, Chris Carpenter. He's pretty intense. And at the beginning of the game, shortstop Brendan Ryan, remember him? He was here for a time. Brendan Ryan had delayed the game because he wasn't at his position and he had the wrong glove on. So Carp and everybody else had finished their warm-ups. He was ready to pitch, but they had to wait because Ryan wasn't ready. Carp was visibly irritated on national television, and in between innings, he took Ryan back into the tunnel and lectured him. Here's a picture. That's fantastic. Just right there on national television. It lasted about 20 seconds. Ryan stood there, and at the end of the 20 seconds, you saw him do this. Yes. He did not last much longer on the Cardinals. But what I love about this moment, what I love about the scene, is that it was so immediate. We're not going to lose this game because you're not ready. Get yourself in the game. What I also love about the moment is who did he not go to? The coach. Tony. Talk to that guy. People come to me all the time saying, hey, can you talk to that guy? I'm like, it's your team. You talk to the guy. I didn't see it. You talk to the guy. Talk it up. I mean, if your kid's Rooftop's worker is doing a great job, what do? Chatter. If they're always late and it's an inconvenience, don't grumble. What do? See, this is why we are preaching this sermon. If they're always late and it's an inconvenience and it's inhibiting your experience of Jesus Christ, what do? Tell them. If the greeters are doing a great job, you can tell them they're doing a great job. This is your team too. If they're welcoming people like a mummy, tell them that. Ask them why they look dead. Why do you look dead? You're a greeter. I mean, do you want greeters scowling at the visitors you bring to your church? Do you believe that this is your church or not? Mostly I think people think it's like Matt's church and maybe a little bit your church. Is it your church or not? God's church, even more theologically accurate. Correct, thank you. If you got something to say, you got to say it. Talk it up. Teams communicate as teams. I mean, staff members and elders cannot be the only ones inspiring you to do your best here. So talk it up. What was my first point? Player position. Lastly, do not let your team down. Good teams require everyone to give their best. They might not be super talented or the best in the world. They give their best. They don't leave anything on the court or on the field or on the track. They do not let each other down. The other day, for example, the U.S. men's track team was competing in the 4x400 relay. I didn't actually see this myself. I heard about it. It's an event. The 4x400 is an event they haven't lost since 1972. Anybody know what happened? Yeah, Monteo Mitchell. Did I say that correctly? Monteo Mitchell was running the first leg of the relay in the preliminaries when he heard a pop in his leg. As he would find out later, he had snapped his left fibula during the race. It had been a little sore, but during the race, with the pressure of the start, it just snapped in two. He still had 200 meters to go against the fastest men in the world in the Olympic semifinal. And he had to do it with a broken leg. Did he do it? Absolutely. And he said in an interview later, like, how? Why? You know what he said? I did not want to let my team down. Good teammates know their fates are tied together. I struggle, you struggle. You struggle, I struggle. I win, you win. You win, I win. When the Israelites in the Old Testament, they learned this really early. When the entire nation was punished because of one man's sin. Anybody remember his name? The sin of Achan. The Apostle Paul labored so diligently in the New Testament, in the early church, not for his own sake, but for the sake of the team. He did not want to let the team down. This is what he writes to Colossians. He says, I rejoice in what I suffered for you, for the sake of the body, the church. And to the Romans he writes, I urge you, brothers, by our Lord Jesus Christ, by the love of the Spirit, join me in my struggle. It's another athletic word. Do not let the team down in this contest. Paul's asking for people to join him on the field, knowing they wouldn't win the game unless they won it together. Even if they're running on broken legs, they can't let each other down. I mean, we all got a lot of broken legs here, right? I'm speaking metaphorically. I got like 3 broken legs. This is funny because you only actually have 2 legs. But I'm going to keep running, not just because I don't want to disqualify myself for heaven, but because I don't want to let you down. I believe in the church that you want us to become. And I want to be the pastor that you want and you need. I'm not going to stop running, even with broken legs. I'll hop down the lane. This is true for us. If we're going to win, we're going to have to do this together. I believe God's got quite a future for us here at Rooftop. I mean, there's a lot of victories ahead for us. We've had quite a run for 12 years or so. We've got some trophies on the shelf in the form of baptisms and commitments and life change. I think we've got the makings of a pretty good team here. But I also think we're still playing like Muppet Man in the exhibition round. Medal play has not started. We haven't met Russia or Finland or the powerhouses. We're like Muppet Man skating around the ice trying to get our team together. Right now, I don't think we'd place. I think Satan would eat us up. That might seem like a rather negative assessment from your coach. But don't get me wrong. I'm not here because I think we're going to lose. I'm here because I think we can win if we play as a team. If you find your role and you play your position, you start shattering instead of just expecting the coach to do all the talking. If we have a commitment to each other, which tells us we're not going to let each other down no matter what. We're going to hop down that lane. We can win if we play as a team. So join us in the struggle, join us on the field, find your position and play it, talk it up like good teams do, all for the glory of Christ, the goal of our faith. We're not competing for earthly gold medals here, we're competing for heavenly gold for His glory. It's not an individual sport there, though it's a team sport. We're only going to see the reward as we learn to play together. So let's go ahead and pray.